Okay, so in CSS, what do we mean by inheritance? Well, the clue is actually in the title. Inheritance refers to inheriting or taking styles from another element. So for example, on our screen here, we have a div with an ID of container, and inside that div, we have 4 paragraph elements, each with a different class. So we have a class of inherit, initial, unset, and revert. Now, what happens if we were to apply a style to this div with an ID of container? What would happen is the elements within this div element will also inherit those styles. So let's take a look at an example. Let's go over to our style.css file, and let's select it by ID. So we'll say hashtag container, and we'll change the color, or we'll rather set the color for all the elements within this container to red. And take a look to see what happens to our paragraph elements here. So we'll say red, and as you can see, our paragraph elements have now turned red. Now, we didn't specifically apply the color of red to these paragraph elements, right? We didn't do P, curly braces, and then color red. So why is this happening? So the reason why this is happening is because our paragraph elements are actually inheriting that style of color red from the div ID of container. We can actually apply some specific styles to our paragraph elements by simply going to our style.css file, and let's say paragraph, we'll say text align center. Not text transform, we want text align center. Okay, let's put them in the center, and we'll say font size, increase this font size nice and big to 50 pixels. Okay, and as you can see, you can apply styles, of course, specifically to an element, but you can also apply styles to containers, or rather parent elements. As we see here, this div would be a parent element to these paragraph elements here, and the styling will get pulled through. Now, it doesn't work for all styles. You know, it makes sense to actually inherit styles such as colors or fonts. That makes sense. It wouldn't make sense to inherit layout styles like padding or margin. You can imagine the chaos that would ensue on the screen if you had that going on. And of course, we'll look at padding and margin a bit later on in the series. So what I'm actually going to do now is I'm actually going to give this paragraph element specifically a color of green. Let's see what happens. Now we can see that it's actually overridden this style here because this is more specific. Now, CSS actually provides 4 special property values that are used to specify inheritance. Let's take a look at what they all are. Well, we can actually see what they are here. Inherit, initial, unset, and revert. Let's take a look at them in action. So down here, let's just do a comment. Now, what does inherit do? Well, this sets the value to inherit from the container. So let's say sets value to inherit from container. Now here we can select it by class, which was inherit. Okay, to show you again up here. Paragraph with the class of inherit. So we're just selecting this paragraph here. And we're going to say color. And then we're going to say inherit. And what's going to happen is this paragraph here, this one right here, is actually going to inherit the color of its parent element. In this case, the parent element had a color of red. Okay, and as you can see here, this paragraph element has now inherited that color of red. Another value used for specifying inheritance is called initial. What does that do? Initial sets the value back to the default browser style. Okay, so let's just see what that default browser style is. If we got rid of the color here, and we got rid of the color on the container, the default browser style is actually black. So what will happen here, although we've got these on, the color for this will be set back to its default browser style. As we've just seen, that default browser style is black. So initial sets the value back the default browser style. Okay, let's take a look at that in action. So a class of initial, curly braces, color, initial. And as you can see, this now has inherited that default browser style, or that initial browser style of black for color. Let's take a look at the third one. The third one is called unset. And this basically can act in 2 different ways. Okay, if the element is naturally inherited, it acts like inherit. If it's not naturally inherited, then it acts like initial. That might be a bit confusing, but let's walk our way through it. Let's just give ourselves some space first. Okay, our paragraph element here of unset is naturally acting like an element that is inheriting a style. Because in here, in our index.html file, it's contained within a div that has a color of red. It's only being overridden, it's only green because we've overridden it here with this paragraph style here. So down here, let's just first say what unset is. So we'll say if the element inherited acts like inherit, and then we'll say otherwise acts like initial. So here, let's say class of unset, curly braces, color unset. Now before I do this, what do you think is going to happen here? Again, this paragraph element here is naturally inheriting a style. It's naturally inheriting this container style here of color red. So unset sets it to red. And to give you an example here of an element that isn't naturally inheriting, so over here, let's do a paragraph tag here. And let's just say, hello, I am not naturally inheriting a style. And let's go back to, let's just give this a class here of not. Okay, let's go to here and say class of not color. I'm going to set it to unset. For this isn't going to turn red. It's actually going to be black because it's going to act like initial, which sets the value back to the default browser style, which, as we've seen before, is black. Okay, so let's just get rid of that. And now the final one is called revert. Let's actually give these titles. Inherit. This one is called initial. This one here is called unset. And this final one is called revert. Now what does this do? Well, revert also can act in two different ways. If the user has defined a style, then it reverts back to it. Otherwise, it uses the default browser style. Now, have we defined a style for this paragraph element? If we scroll up, we can see, yes, we have. We've actually defined a style for this as color green. And so we would expect this to remain green. Let's just put in our comment here to explain what the revert value does. So we said if user has defined style, revert back to it, otherwise use default browser styles. Okay, so let's do class of revert, curly braces, color, revert. And as you can see, exactly what we expected, it's going to stay green because we have defined a style. Okay guys, so I hope you found that useful. Again, if you have any questions or queries, please do put them down in the comment area below. Please hit that like and subscribe button, and as always, I'll see you on the next one.